But the hardest thing is, we were like pre-revenue for almost 2 years because it was a medically regulated product.
Yeah.
So we were selling hopes and dreams to investors for 2 years that this is the future. Burning cash, doing regulatory approval. I knew nothing about hearing health. I had zero background about health. First, I thought it was a really bad idea. We sold more units in 1 month than we sold the entire previous year. It was ludicrous, the amount of travel I spent. I remember my wife counted every day. She said, you were in the US, I think 160 days that year after 365 days, right? On day of legislation change in October 2022, we were in 13,500 retail stores in the US. That year, we had to pay them $4 million in marketing co-op dollars. Not wiping out, but almost wiping out our profit we made from them that year, right?
Hi, and welcome to Founders at Work, where we unpack real founder stories on scaling and mine for the timeless principles that founders have earned the hard way on how to scale so you don't have to. I'm Jason Goldberg, your host today, author of Art of Scale, been scaling and helping other founders scale for about 20 years. It's my passion. And joining me today is a good friend, Nic Klopper, co-founder and also former CEO of hearX. And today we're going to hear about one of Africa's fastest growth, prolific scale-ups that cracked it in the US market, how they got there, what it cost, and how they hung on for dear life at times. So Nic, welcome. Nic, thanks for joining us.
Jason, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So Nic, give us a little bit about Nic Klopper, a little bit on your background, and then how you got going with hearX, and a few battle stats, all in a tight nutshell, just to set the scene.
For sure. So, serial entrepreneur by heart. hearX was my 7th startup. Sure. Before that, I've exited 4 of them.
Wow.
And yeah, hearX has been a new story for me because I had zero background about health. So first venture into the health space. But hearX has been just every founder's dream, right? It's just kind of, there's a lot of battle scars. I'm sure we're going to talk about that today. But it's been an incredible ride. Almost 10 years that I've been with hearX, no longer with them now, and we can talk about that later. But so just quickly in a nutshell, hearX started in 2015, spun out from University of Pretoria. And in our journey, we started in South Africa, scaled to the US. We raised in total of around just over $200 million. And we did the largest healthcare merger in South Africa's history, which I led, which we closed in end of March last year.
Well done. I mean, an epic journey. We're talking a little bit about the end of the road from Nic Klopper's perspective, but I mean, $200 million, that's a lot of checks in South African terms, 3 billion Rand plus. You had hundreds of employees. You were at one point in 60 odd countries, at parts of your journey, your products. You know, millions of people have benefited from your products. So, you know, it is, as you said, it's the every founder's dream, right? Scale and then go global and actually make it and succeed. So I'm looking forward to the journey. So let's go back in time and talk about why hearing health.
Well, firstly, I knew nothing about hearing health, right? It's not something that I are familiar with. It's actually a good friend of mine who introduced me to Devet, which became my founder. And they had this idea to put a hearing test on a smartphone. And, you know, just being an entrepreneur all my life, I know sometimes it's the unsexy businesses which have got that very carved out niche, right, where you can disrupt a business. So first, I thought it was really a bad idea to get into hearing health only for older people. You know, it's not sexy. People don't want to wear hearing aids. It's very stigmatized. And then I said, you know what? It's worth me actually diving deeper into really understanding what this is all about. So I did just some desktop research and found that there's 460 million people around the globe with permanent disabling hearing loss. And most of the people around the globe can't have access to these because they are too expensive. It's $5,000 for a pair of hearing aids. There ain't enough audiologists in the world. And then secondly is if you think about healthcare insurance, only a small portion of people have got health insurance, which doesn't make it accessible. And if you think about me being a social entrepreneur as well, there was this passion about helping people who can't afford them as well, and making this technology firstly more accessible and democratizing it. So that was kind of the journey, kind of how I decided there's something I want to take a stake in for me as a founder.
So interesting, like you didn't have background in the sector. And so through networks, you stumbled across the opportunity through somebody deep in it. So somebody technical in that space. And it sounds like you discovered there's actually a big opportunity here because the people with a real concrete need are radically underserved. And the state of technology now makes it possible to serve them in a way that hasn't been possible before. And so you dived in. Tell us a bit about that technology. You guys had some great tech.
Yeah, so I mean, the early days was not great. Let's be dead honest. It's like it was tough, man. It was really tough. So just to tag onto what you just said, my two co-founders one was a professor in audiology, and the other one is a professor in AI. But they were professors, right? Didn't know anything about business, so they kind of brought me on board to make this a business, commercialize it. So we spun that out from the University of Pretoria. That was the first journey. But yeah, so the technology is started first on taking that first smartphone on a mobile device, which if you think about technology in 2014, a smartphone is not the same as a smartphone is today, right?
It's come a long way.
It's come a long way. So there was a lot of work we had to do to actually present the tones and files on a smartphone in 2014 to actually become a clinically valid hearing test. So there was a lot of like voodoo, low-level coding we had to do, but we were really the first, and we
blazing a trail. And you're on exponential technology curves. It was always going to get better, right?
Exactly. I mean, it was we at that point in time. If you look at access to smartphones, there were actually at that stage in 2014 already more smartphones in the world than there were people. So, and that was 2014, right? Yeah. So we knew that was going to be the way in which people are going to consume technology. At that point, definitely not health technology, but we knew that was the future. The question is, were we too early at that point, right? We started there. We developed a whole slew of technologies. The same trap most founders found ourselves in. Another feature, another technology, another adaptation of this product is gonna work. So, and I think we really early on had to learn that changing the status quo and getting an audiologist to trust all of a sudden an iPad, which is better than a very big, expensive audiometer, was a very hard battle. And we didn't win that battle. It was just too impossible for us to win that battle. So a lot of lessons learned. In that journey, what was quite tough for us is now figuring out where to go, right? We have this amazing technology. We know it's cutting edge. To say, where do people still need to do a hearing assessment that is not necessarily going to an audiologist? And then we had to find these minds where they had to do annual hearing assessments. And then we found schools, right? Because we know that if you can't hear, you can't learn, you can't develop speech. And then we started found all these different market niches, which then took us outside of the audiology practice. And that was when I think the first traction with regards to our products started. But the hardest thing is, we were like pre-revenue for almost 2 years because it was a medically regulated product. So we were selling hopes and dreams to investors for 2 years that this is the future, burning cash, doing regulatory approval before you get that. And that I didn't appreciate as a founder, right? How much it takes to build a medical device company as opposed to just building an e-commerce store, right? You have an idea, you put it online, you start selling, right? It's two completely worlds apart. So
this, you're in the pre-product market fit stage over here. You got amazing technology. Importantly, you were early at the time where a fundamental platform shift to mobile was taking place, and that platform shift was an exponential curve that was going to enable shifts of behavior and unlock new markets. And you guys were early, and the fact that you were early pioneering the technology that would enable mobile phone-based hearing diagnostics positioned you well, but it still wasn't easy to crack the business model. And the obvious business model didn't work. Obvious business model was go to the people who do this, the audiologists, and it didn't work. And so you were stuck in that fine product market fit loop for quite a while. And from what you've told me, it was messy. Tell us a bit more about that and what eventually clicked, how you eventually got to product market fit in a business model you knew you could scale.
Yeah. So coming from the university, I think one of the key things for us was getting validation of our technologies, doing a lot of research, articles, peer-reviewed papers. So we just continued making sure that people appreciate that a mobile device or our technology was as good as, or potentially even better than doing it traditionally, right? Because there's no more human error, all the other things, right? But there was this like, I can do it better mentality, right? I'm an audiologist. I've trained for 4 years. I can do it better. There's no way this is going to take my job. The same way people think about AI these days, right? There's no way AI is going to take my job or do it better than I do. So we had to overcome that quite extensively. So we kept on grinding. We had collaborations, WHO, et cetera, et cetera. But when it clicked for us, and that was really only like 5 years into the journey, right, was when COVID struck. And that shifted the entire world. I mean, it shook most industries, right? But what happened in our industry is all audiologists had to go sit at home. People which are in their 60s or 70s didn't want to go into this very confined, I'm not sure if you've been in an audiology booth, it's a 2x2, walled off room with someone else in the room with you and having been potentially exposed to COVID, right?
Because and it's by nature in-person industry.
It's an in-person industry.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden is this, so the hearing aid manufacturer selling hearing aids went into a total fizz and panic saying, how do we get hearing tests done? Because if we don't do hearing tests, we can't fit hearing aids, right? So that industry is going to just go bust. There was this survey that went out that I think it was in March that said, if this continue, 80% of audiologists say we will be out of business by May that year.
Wow.
So, and that was our leapfrog moment, right? Something as bad as COVID. So what happened is our technology was the only mobile technology which they can use to do testing outside of the booth. And because you didn't need a booth with our technology, people would drive up in their cars. The audiologist with a mask and gloves would give them this tablet and headphones in the car.
With your software.
With our software on. They would do the test. They will sit in the car. The audiologist have either an iPad or they basically get saved in the cloud. They can open up on their computer, see the exact audiogram, and then fit the hearing aid or program the hearing aid and then just give it to the customer to take home. And then business models started evolving around this. So we would like shipping these in these like boxes with FedEx across the US to different states, different places. People would do the home assessments. We had a video conference. So in April that year, so we all went into lockdown in March. In April that year, we sold more units in 1 month than we sold the entire previous year. In 1 month.
You like 10x in 1 month.
In 1 month.
And that was triggered by COVID, basically. So you, I mean, in a lot of ways, you got lucky, right? Like the world broke and it helped you. But actually, that happens with a lot of the best startups is that they're just ready when the moment arrives. And you were ready with the technology that met the moment and the need of the hour when that moment came. And then you 10x'd in a month, and then how the hell did you manage that?
So, I mean, that was really the start, right? And I want to just, step 2 steps back, because leading up to COVID, we knew that this business model, which we had around the traditional prescription model, is broken. That's kind of why I went into this. The $5,000 hearing aid, that moat needed to be broken, right?
Totally.
We need to break that mold. So what happened is in 2017, in the beginning of the Trump administration, there was new regulation which was being reviewed by the Senate that said that if you've got a mild to moderate hearing loss, you no longer need to go to an audiologist to get a hearing aid fitted.
That's a big shift.
Massive shift, right? Now, the plan was by August 2020 that law would have been enacted. COVID came, the FDA, which has to approve these, had their hands full on approving vaccines instead of focusing on hearing aids and hearing health, right? So all of us, including hearX, were developing technologies for this come of change in regulation, and that didn't happen. So instead of August 2020, that got delayed by 2 years.
Wow.
4 of our 5 closest competitors didn't make it that 2 years because they didn't have a legacy business, which we had, right? Which at that point is now kind of 10x, which is now keeping the lights on at least.
Yes.
And only in October, the 6th of October, 2022, that regulation effectively came into effect. But the idea was we have this prescription business, testing people, identifying with hearing loss, but then we always had to refer them to an audiologist. So what we did is we said, we are not going to do that. We're going to develop our own platform called Lexi and fit people with a hearing aid via smartphone. But the premise was always challenged because people were like, how would a 70-year-old person know how to download an app, install a hearing aid, speak to someone remotely over a video call? That's never going to happen. So the business model is broken before we started.
Right.
But COVID changed that.
Until March, right?
Until March 2020. Because what happened, my parents, your parents, everybody had to learn to remotely video call.
On Zoom. Yeah.
Exactly, right? Speak to, your other family. And these days, the amount of video calls we do today as opposed to previously has tenfolded, right? Even more.
Yeah.
And that was, once again, a key moment for us to leapfrog someone into our realm, which wouldn't have been possible. So when we were developing this technology, we thought that this is going to come. We just don't know how long. And that leapfrogged forward.
So some things got delayed and pushed out, and some things got radically compressed, like consumer behavior shift, right? And so, you lucked out. We all luck out. If you're going to scale, you're going to luck out a lot on a number of factors, and you're going to work hard. So it's always a mix, and it's great to recognize the luck because, every founder needs to know, there's a big luck component to it. So now that you are scaling radically on legacy business, but also preparing for the future. Tell us about how the shift to the future business model, the over-the-counter devices happened.
Yeah, so what an incredible story. So I remember I was on a trip to the US in 2017 because I was selling these in-store kiosks, which you put up in pharmacies. And we're like, generating leads for audiologists and so forth. And I was making the rounds to all these people selling hearing aids online, et cetera, in the US. And I'm like, the model is broken. They're charging too much. The return rates are too high. And I came back to the office and I said to my CEO, I said, listen here, we are going to develop a hearing aid, an OTC hearing aid. She's like, are you mad? We know nothing about developing hearing aids. And I said, we are going to do it. I tell you now, that is our moment. And this change in regulation is not going to come by again, and we have to capitalize on it. So we built a software platform and said, listen here, what we're not going to do is develop the hearing aid.
Right.
Then trying to find a hearing aid partner that had a good enough hearing aid for us was such a challenge, right? So the only people we could find is cheap stuff from China. And the big manufacturers didn't want to work with us because they saw this model as competitive to no longer being able to sell 5,000 hearing aids, right? $5,000 hearing aids. So we found this very nice, unique supply out of the US. I spent a lot of time there. We co-developed this device. And about 6 months prior to this regulation coming, some of the retailers that we've been engaging with saying this legislation is changing, we're going to go live, was Walgreens. And they said to us, they tested our devices, they tested it through this whole regime, and they said their lawyers think it's possible to launch in selective states in the US. As we know, they operate almost like a whole country in its own right, as opposed to a federal level. Feel comfortable to launch in 500 stores prior to this legislation coming off. And they want to pilot with us.
Limited pilot, 500 stores.
Limited pilot, 500 stores. Just caveating that. More than entire clicks rollout in South Africa, right? So we said, game on. So we did a limited run of the devices. We tested it. And it was a major success. So
sourced out of China at that point?
So at that point, no. So we went very far with one Chinese partner. We had a lot of QA problems. We went to a US manufacturer. We found a nice partner. And we then onboarded that device into our platform, which then was the ability to remotely program it from a mobile device. And we launched in pharmacy in Walgreens. So where you went to the pharmacy counter, they would then talk to you, and if you're of age, ask you if you're interested in hearing aid, and they would sell these. The difference were our device was selling for $799 as opposed to $5,000.
And I mean, that's one difference. But the other difference is you don't have to go through the whole process of seeing an audiologist and their prescription. You can get it over the counter, right?
Exactly.
In store right now.
No one needed. You take it home, and
so
kids were buying that for their parents, right? Because it was accessible for the first time. And parents didn't want to wear them. And our view was it's going to also take away that stigma as well, because there's something wrong with me. I have to go to an audiologist or to a specialist to get this fixed, right?
Now it's just like a consumer electronic.
So that's kind of the shift, right? And that's what we were hoping for. And we said, listen, if big brands, the big sound brands or the Apples of the world can enter the space, it'll be phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
So what happened in this journey is as part of this leading up to OTC, this launch with Walgreens, and just before that, 6 months before that, we met Bose in TechCrunch. We were presenting the love that we were doing, and they led our Series A round. And they knew that we were going into the space, but they told us, Nic, we are also developing a hearing aid, and we are going to directly compete with you on the same shelf that you're competing with. And we're like, it's fine. And they said, listen here, Nic, we think your technology is incredible. There's a lot of technologies we don't have, and we actually licensed for their first product, actually some technology which we built to them. Great stamp of approval, having Bose as a partner. And we launched in Walgreens, incredible success. And about that 6 months prior to the OTC legislation coming off, Bose started selling online. But COVID had a massive destructive hammer to the consumer business. And they lost $1 billion in top line revenue that year. And a new CEO came in, and they got all the McKinsey's of the world, the consultants in, and they said, out with the old. Sorry, keep on focusing on what you know. Everything else, let it go. So they divested out of everything else. So the entire health business, which is comprised of hearing and sleep buds, they divested.
Killed it.
And they said, instead of killing it, why don't we partner with someone who already we have a stake in and offer them our IP?
All right.
So at that point, they invested $500 million in developing the hearing aid technology and platform. Insane. And they sold it to us for $1.
$1. And what was the fine print on the dollar?
We had a royalty agreement with them. And we managed to procure all their IP, their platform, and a 5-year licensing deal to use their brand on a device.
Amazing.
And they knew that at that point we had a lot of secured contracts with the retailers.
I mean, your Walgreens deals.
And that was fantastic, right? When we signed the Bose deal, every single retail partner in the US came begging.
I'm sure.
And they said, we want you to be in our stores when this legislation passes. So in August, we got word that we're 2 months out from passing. And on day of legislation change in October 2022, we were in 13,500 retail stores in the US.
Unbelievable. So now I want to pause here because there are a couple of things worth noting in your journey, right? Which are lessons I think a lot of founders can benefit from. So just the amazing catalytic, accelerating, leapfrogging effect of these major global brands that you partnered with because you met a need that they had. So Walgreens, Bose, it's kind of a virtuous cycle there, right? Of how you manage to lock in distribution, which is, let's face it, the hardest thing for most scale-ups. With, I don't know, that might be the biggest distribution opportunity in the biggest market in the world for your product, right? But initially on a pilot scale, then Bose brings further confidence and and better IP, reinforcing confidence. And next thing you know, you're in 13,500 stores overnight. Boom. That sounds like a good thing if you haven't built a company before. So maybe let's talk a bit about that. What did it feel like when that happened?
So to get that right, just to tell you, was hard. I mean, I remember Walgreens would phone me on the Friday. We became very close to the management team there. The one guy's name was Chris. He would phone me on the Friday and says, Nic, I know in South Africa, we've got a management meeting on 8 o'clock in Chicago on Monday. Can you be here? And I'll be on a plane on Saturday, do the meeting, fly back on the Monday, and then he'll phone me again on the Friday for a next management meeting the following week. So it was ludicrous, the amount of travel I spent. I remember my wife counted every day. She said, you were in the US, I think 160 days that year of the 365 days, right? Just on flights, right?
And I mean, that's not just like being away, right? That's the time zone shift over and over and over again. And all that comes with travel and I mean, so the health cost personally, I mean, must have been enormous.
It was crazy, and it was crazy. But anyway, let me tell you about how cool it was. But it was fantastic. I remember we had this amazing retail distribution. We had this amazing product line. OTC came off. We had our website ready. Everything was like lining up. And I remember Senator Warren, which was the big, and Gasly, which were the big endorsers of this. So CNN and CNBC and all the big news channels in the US covered this like every half an hour in the US. And then the main event, when they said this legislation passed, they stood in a Walgreens with my product in their hands. I still have a picture of it, saying this is an example of how this is going to change the world.
What a moment. I mean, that is a huge moment. That is the moment that entrepreneurs, you couldn't have, there's no amount of capital you could have raised for the marketing impact of that moment.
Yeah. I mean, I was flying around doing interviews with the New York Times with every single outlet talking about, because we were like on the forefront, because we had the distribution, we had the brand, and everybody was talking about us, right? How this is just changing. So it was incredible, right? Yeah. What we didn't foresee was how big it's going to be. And how much capital it's going to require to actually scale this business, right? Because we had a very much South African mentality about, capital needs, etc., scaling into the biggest market in the world.
Yeah, so you think in single-digit millions of dollars, 2 million, and then 4 million, and then 6 million. So tell us what you really landed up needing.
So to put this into perspective, our Walgreens deployment cost us $8 million.
Yeah.
That excludes all the other retail doors, and that was only 8,000 of our 13,000 stores we scaled in. So we had Walmart, we had Costco, and then came the other pharmacies, said, you can't just be in the one, and then we played up CVS against Walgreens, which is their competitor, et cetera, et cetera. And it cost just tons and tons of money, right? I remember that year, we raised $36 million that year to just enable our scaling, right?
I mean, you must have been just virtually in meetings, legal agreements, lawyers, discussions.
Yeah, in between launching OTC, right? So I was traveling around raising capital while the team was like implementing and, shipping products to stores, right? But there's a but. The unfortunate but is it was much larger than we anticipated.
Yeah.
So we anticipated like a 2-3x jump on kind of what we were selling in those 500 stores before the time, and our stock planning and everything was similar, and it shoot the lights out. So what happened is we ran out of inventory on we had a entry level product and a high end product within 7 days.
Wow.
Fantastic problem to have. The biggest problem is your largest retailer's like, why am I out of inventory? I'm losing money.
Yeah.
Where's my stock?
Yeah. Are you a reliable supplier? Are you a reliable partner? Yeah.
Exactly. Another thing that happened is all of a sudden my phones started ringing.
Oof. Yeah.
I had 15 people in my call center ready, take every call. Within the first 2 days, the waiting time to get onto a phone with a sales support agent was an hour and a half.
Wow.
Didn't have inventory, couldn't answer the phones.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
So that threw us, right?
Yeah.
That was chaos and mayhem, right? So jumped on planes, procurement team, getting inventory in. I mean, we hired people to work through the night, put up a line in the factory to pump out more inventory. And then it was also leading up to the Christmas Black Friday period. I mean, it was October, right? So it was the hottest sales period of the month, of the year. So we just couldn't miss out on that, right? So it was a lot of sleepless nights, but we prevailed. We kind of managed to keep those relationships active, a lot of time in their offices, and that was tough, but we prevailed in that time, right, to kind of repair those relationships, which could have gone haywire.
So I mean, amazing for keeping it together, because a lot of big brand new problems suddenly appeared, and they're not ones you solve overnight. So we're going to get into this phase of the story, but I want to just backtrack a little, and I want to plumb back what we've covered from the perspective of the timeless principles of scaling. Right? What you guys really nailed at this point is almost the holy grail of scaling. You're positioned now to be number one in a very clear niche, which is huge and new, right? And recently enabled by shift regulation technology, which means there's still room to make mistakes, because everybody's catching up with the opportunity. So being number one in this niche, you're going to be the over-counter hearing aid. I don't know if you called it a hearing aid.
Hearing
aid device leader in the world's biggest market, with locked-in distribution with the world's biggest, essentially, retailers, and that is the holy grail of scaling. But because you got it right, now it's early days, you've still got a lot to execute on, but the seed is there. Because you've got it right, growth is suddenly exponential. You're not chasing growth. You're trying to catch up with yourself, trying to keep up with the growth. And suddenly large, complex, brand new problems are appearing, multiple of them, all at one time. And you're already stretched just executing on what you could plan for. And now you've got all this to cater for as well. So that's the next chapter in a way. You've kind of, in chapter 1, you've moved from a great technology in a university lab to commercialized it and found product market fit with distribution, and now on an exponential growth curve. Amazing chapter, exhilarating ride. Feels good to have got here, and now it's a completely new game. So tell us about what shifted at this time for hearX, the company, for you, the leader. How did this next chapter start playing out?
Yeah, so that following year, so that was 2022, 2023, we were dubbed, and there was actually a classification of the #1 selling OTC brand in the US.
Wow.
So, and we could use that everywhere.
Yeah.
We could do marketing claims on that. And that was just incredible, right?
Yeah.
So,
and was it the same year you were fastest growing African startup? Was that 2024?
So we got 2022, we got 2023 and 2024.
Wow. And then Time 100, when was it?
We're the first South African company to make the Time 100 list of influential companies in the world.
And that year was 2024?
2023.
Okay. So, I mean, amazing. You just couldn't ask for more marketing ammo than you guys have got. So it's fueling growth. Growth is going bonkers.
Yeah. So it was an incredible feeling. Everybody was on a high, this because prior 7 years, people were like, are we going to get to the end of the month? Are we going to get a salary, right? Everybody knew it was hard, right?
Yeah.
And you could see the sales weren't coming in and the team was growing, right? So, prior to OTC launch, we were 36 people. We scaled that here to 220 people.
Wow.
I
mean, 220, it doesn't sound big to most people, but to go from 36 to 220 in that amount of time,
year.
That is terrifying.
It's terrifying. So we had and the problem is, I remember Jason in my ear from 10X, and he's like, take your time with hiring or hire the right people, right? So I spent time on hiring the right leaders, but that the rest of the team spend the right time on hiring everybody? Most probably not.
Yeah.
But we just needed people, more and more people.
Needed body count.
Just body count and head count.
Yeah.
And I wish we had AI, right? We can automate this. But unfortunately, at that point, it was very manual. We had to still answer the phone, had to reply to that email, get the product into people's hands, do the packaging, do the marketing ourselves. Maybe one additional tidbit was that was the great part.
Yeah.
The challenging part was all of a sudden I learned all the nuances of the US market coming from South Africa. Yeah. I didn't really understand that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And we made so many mistakes, which in hindsight I would have loved to go change. And I know what I need to do now if I had to do that over. But we made some expensive mistakes, which cost us millions of dollars, which was unfortunate.
I mean, there's one particular $4 million mistake you told me about. I'd love you to just rewind and tell me again.
So the infamous Walgreens are incredible with their contracting, right?
Yeah.
And access to all our stores. You're going to get a lot of money from us. But all these terms in these contracts, right? Which is like, exclusivity agreements and, they call it scan and ship and, late payment and early payment. And one of these things were called marketing co-op dollars. I remember. And needless to know is apparently what you do is a certain portion of your sales for that here, you pay them.
Right.
And they say the reason you pay them is because they're the marketing angle. They put out a newsletter, they spend on driving people to the store, and a portion of your sales goes to their marketing. And that year we had to pay them $4 million in marketing co-op dollars.
Sure.
Not wiping out, but
Yeah,
almost
yeah.
wiping out our profit we made from them that year, right?
And I mean, I'm sure in hindsight, you now know how to scratch that clause.
Oh, 100%, right? So the problem was Nic was negotiating that contract. I had no retail experience in the US, understanding what all these things were.
Yeah.
And that was an expensive mistake.
Just on the AI point, I mean, like we are so wired as founders to wing it on big stakes issues because we don't have a choice. Like, for better or worse, I'm the guy, you know, and this is what I know, and I can't afford the experts. And how amazing is it that we can basically recruit the world's best expert at any topic almost if you just know how to work with AI now. I mean, you could have saved that $4 million mistake in about 20 minutes.
Dude, if I could have run that through a GPT and just let me understand all those provisions or clauses, I would have most probably not have made that mistake, or be in at least in a better negotiating position where it's maybe $2 million as opposed to $4 million, right?
Yeah. So I mean, this is why we are going all in on helping founders scale with AI, because we think there are so many $4 million mistakes that I'm making, founders all over the place are making, because we're winging it on high stakes issues instead of like harnessing the power of this abundant cognition that's basically free across our organizations. Anyway, we'll get to that later, how AI changes scaling. But the $4 million mistakes, I mean, how many of those sorts of mistakes, they may not have all been $4 million. How many do you think you made in that time period where everything was a rush and you didn't think you could afford, you know, the people you needed?
Yeah, let me tell you about another one. Is I didn't appreciate how litigious the US is.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't think we were 6 months into this massive scaling journey. We got our first cease and desist letter. Patent infringement. So a patent troll managed to get a patent that stipulates that if you program a hearing aid via Bluetooth, you're infringing on his patent, which is every hearing aid in the world.
Totally. But I mean,
and we had 60 days to comply.
It's a business model for him.
And we had 60 days to comply or shut it down.
Okay. So just another issue you didn't need to spend time on.
Right.
Yeah.
But once again, freak out as a founder. Yeah. What do I do? You know, and I think at that point, I really appreciated.
I've lost track of one thing here. So you're now like you're all in on the over-the-counter market. What happened to the legacy business?
Yeah. So it took the backseat, to be honest. And not for that, I don't think at that point that there was anything wrong with that business. At that point, we must be doing $2 million a year through our legacy business. But then we had this business doing, 20x that. We were doing more than $2 million a month in OTC sales, and we're doing that in a year. All of a sudden, you need to kind of weigh up your options. So we had the dedicated team, and I think that entire division felt like we're not good enough. Why don't we get the light of day? Why don't all the capital gets deployed to this shiny toy, right? And then I think it was only about 6 months in when I started, coming up for air for the first time. I said, how do we leverage this amazing technology that we have in boosting the sales? And then it was so obvious. I said, all the stuff that we've been doing for audiologists, we should do it for ourselves. So we then went into this mode, we hired the right people, and we then set up like these hearing centers where there weren't people where they can do their hearing assessment, speak to one of our audiologists, ask the questions inside these pharmacies. There was this amazing pharmacy group called CVS, which had these health hubs. They were like the flagship stores. There were 2,000 of these health hubs. There were dedicated people on the ground. There's clinics, etc. And in these health hubs, we set up these hearing centers, or virtual hearing centers. We used our legacy businesses technology to enable the other one. So did this our traditional business make more money? No, but they enabled our new division to make 2x, 3x more money because we really started finding the niche of connecting the two together.
But almost it became a new channel for the real product. So you repurposed it. You shifted it away from an income stream in its own right, a business in its own right, to essentially a proprietary channel, which is extremely powerful. And okay, so you started concentrating everything you did. in on executing on this scalable over-the-counter model? What else did you have to amputate?
So a lot, right? I mean, the early days, and I just want to reflect on that quickly, is you do what it takes to pay the bills. So we made all the mistakes, right? Another feature, another product, another country is going to solve this for us. I'm going to make more revenue from this. Building custom solutions for our customers. So we had like all these like custom implementations of a product which we had to uphold. And when the new software updates come out, this one will be breaking. This one will be breaking. Our dev team was more managing builds and they were like developing the product. So and all those mistakes eventually in 5 years comes to bite you, right? Because you had all these things. So we just had to shut it down. So we looked at the data. I said, out of that legacy business, which are the products that actually make money? And we shut down everything else other than 2 products. That's stemming down from 11 products to 2. And we just needed to focus, right? Really say, where's the true opportunity? Where can we execute? And everything else is just noise.
I mean, up until then, it wasn't just noise, it was experiments, trying to find where to scale. But now you found it, right? So now it moves from experiments to noise. And so you did exactly the right thing. You amputated, you harvested resources, focus, capacity, so you could concentrate it in on what you've now proven is a scalable model. And I think that's what many scale-up founders, we battle with that because we're in love with some of the legacy stuff, some of the experiments. But actually, it's what's hogging the scarce attention and resources we need to concentrate it in and double down on the thing that's really going to scale. So at this point, you're starting to live the like strategy is subtraction, right? You're subtracting stuff that's not helping you compound gains on your scalable business model.
And we are proud, right? Saying,
of our ideas.
Exactly. How was the guy who said that product, if we just develop that product or that feature, we're going to make it. 2 years along the line, I have to tell the team, no, I was wrong, right? So it's so humbling being a founder as well. So you're right. Scaling by subtraction is something that I think we all know, but until you've found what works, it's so difficult, right?
So hard,
You almost feel like you can't afford not to lose that $100,000 in revenue, which is one product, which is not really doing anything, is bringing you, because that's keeping 3 jobs alive.
It's paying that's exactly right. And I think it's the hard thing. It's recognizing when it's time to shift, because actually let's face it, in Africa, capital is not abundant. It's difficult to raise capital. It's difficult to raise it on good terms. And while there are exceptions, actually most of us have to scale in a very capital efficient way. And capital efficient, like one of the things that means is bootstrapping, and it means finding the income that is close enough, close enough, and paying a lot of bills so we can use that expert here. And so I think that this is in tension with the principle of focus, but in a way it's not, because you're also focusing on survival. Like there's a period where you are focusing on survival and you're doing what you have to, and the hustle is part of that. But the key is when it's time to shift, you have to shift. When you lock into the thing you've now proven will scale, and that's what you guys did with the over-the-counter opportunity, then it is time to make the shift and to amputate the arms and the legs. And now it's strategy is subtraction.
Exactly right. So swallowed the bitter pill, told the team we have to focus. And I think we got it right. We kept what was working. Like we said, this business was becoming a fantastic underpin for our traditional business. And then one thing that was crucial is in this traditional legacy business, we developed these online hearing assessments. So we were licensing these to audiologists for their website, but there was no traffic.
Right.
When you put that on CVS or Walgreens or Walmart's website, tons of traffic. So we just repurposed that, reskinned it, put it on these large websites. And every single retailer selling OTC still today in the US is using hearX's online hearing assessment. And where do you think those leads go?
Yeah, amazing.
So this was an amazing lead generator for our business, something which took the team a couple of months to develop. Incredible technology used the right way.
And so in this case, subtraction didn't mean amputate, it meant repurpose and align to our business model.
The business model shifted.
Yeah. Okay. What was the hardest thing you had to do when it came time to now focus on the over-the-counter model?
I think the hardest thing for me was making that transition as a founder, where the things that I still think makes me incredible, I'm extremely good from taking us from 0 to 1.
Right.
Is exactly the things prohibiting me from going from 10 to 100.
Yeah.
So I needed to make quite a big transition. We became corporate. We had all this very regulatory heavy compliance in the US. We had audits, regulatory audits twice a year. Everybody was freaking out about those.
Yeah.
And
not your classic entrepreneur's happy
it's
place.
not my happy place.
Yeah.
Things slowed down. I'm like, these are the 10 things we have to fix today. And they're like, no, product definition specs. We have to then send it to the FDA, do a user study. After the user study, write it up, do clinical validation. I'm like, previously we just develop it, put it in the market and see if people complain about it, right? If they don't complain about it, it works, And it frustrated me so much.
How did you cope with that?
I don't think I ever coped with it, to be that honest. I think I was that, when they speak about the CEO just wants to, or someone in the team just wants to go, and they're always fighting with development or fighting with business, and then regulatory was in there. I think it was healthy battles because I was just pushing the team harder to go faster. And then there was this big regulatory 14 team, mountain, which just kept me in place. I think it was okay, but I didn't change as a founder necessarily, other than saying, I accept that reality that we're in now, being uncomfortable in the uncomfortableness, but I'm not going to stop pushing us forward.
So you sounds like you managed to arrive at a manageable tension between the growth force, which you brought, right? The pioneering go energy, and the stability force. The regulatory compliance and operational excellence and rigor and caution. And within your exco, it sounds like you managed to get that healthy tension right.
The amount of fights, and I'm sure my exco is going to watch this one day, and they're going to laugh, is the amount of fights we've had about me just wanting to do the next thing, and then saying we have to stable the ship, make sure the code's good, customer service excellent, those things which are so crucial for a brand, but it's not exciting for the CEO, is exactly what you spoke about. It's exactly where we were at.
So I guess everybody was out of comfort zone. You were going much slower than you liked. But you were compliant, mostly, I hope. And your team was being pushed to go faster than they felt was safe, but they were holding the reins, they were reining you in. And that natural balance, often is what makes for great scale-ups. You've got the right people in place who are doing their job, keeping the ship afloat, right? Making sure the holes are plugged and so forth. But you've also got the crazy pioneer making sure we don't get stuck here. And that's why, obviously, often it's the incumbents that just miss the new big opportunity. They're just too slow. They don't have the nick. And so, are you still friends with all those leaders you had to manage?
Extremely well. Good friends. Much better friends now because I'm not pushing them anymore, right?
Okay, good.
And just one thing to add to that is, I think what has been incredible with are still going slow and keeping our compliance is all of a sudden people say there's no way a startup will be able to get the 510K cleared, because the only people who got that was the big hearing aid manufacturers, right? Here's this small startup from South Africa who got the same compliance, scaling faster than they are. And guess what? They were running to us. We had 2 acquisition offers from the biggest hearing aid manufacturers who wanted to buy us. We had private equity guys who wanted to invest, seeing that this is the future. And all of a sudden, that stuff that wasn't exciting for me was just about the growth, was the stuff that people also recognized and said, this is why we want to invest, because you have both.
Right. So this almost sounds like the start of a third chapter, because chapter 1 was finding product market fit, and you had great tech, but how are we going to deploy this in a scalable business model? And then you found product market fit, and the over-the-counter model clicked, and then you started scaling like crazy, and then it became scaling by partnership, right? There was Bose partnership, there was the Walgreens partnership. So you were a small startup in a crazy big space with furious competition, but those key partnerships were fundamental in how you scaled. And then it sounds like now you're getting to a point where big deals are being offered. And I know that you guys ultimately, you combine forces with, is it hearGo, and then became Alexi. And so now is it growth by M&A?
I think so. So what happened is, 2022 was that massive scale up. 2023 was stabilizing the ship. Still revenue was growing. End of 2023, there was this flood of cheap Chinese products into the market. There was confusion. People were like, oh my gosh, is this now a good hearing aid? Is this a good one? Which one should I choose? Because there's a variety of options. That took 6 months to fizzle out. And then 2024 was the year of consolidation. So what happened is people were clearly identifying who the market leaders were at that point. I want to just give you one piece of, one nugget of gold. In 2024, World Hearing Day. So a year and a half in, World Hearing Day, we said we want to beat every sales record we've previously had. So we had this, we were leading up, we were saying we call it 3 million in one day, dollars. And we said we're going to achieve that. And we did a very nice exclusive on QVC, one of the largest home shopping networks in the US. So there was 100 million people in the US got access to QVC. We did a retailer promotion. We had a website promotion. And we actually exceeded our number of $3 million in one day.
You beat the 3 million.
We beat that by quite a margin. And clearly, the market stats, there was these market stats companies that track market share. And that's freely available in the US, which is fantastic, right? So you subscribe to these, fairly expensive, but you could see how you fare against your competitors, right? And we had about a 65% market share for one of our brands in the US.
That's huge and rare.
Rare, right? So more than 50% in the market. And at that point in time, I wouldn't say capital were abundant, but we were saying no to capital opportunities coming our way because at that point, we had break-even months. There's things which, all companies want. You're still capital intensive heavy, right? But from an OpEx perspective, you break even. At that point, we had some very strategic competitors in the space. We were like, for us to develop that technology, it's going to take a lot of time, right? So we approached, and a lot of our competitors, we all knew each other in the space, and we spoke to our investors, and effectively our board said, this is the year of consolidation, right? So we lined up a couple of deals. Some of them didn't go through, which is fantastic. But the one we were really excited about was a company which at that stage were listed on the New York Stock Exchange, and the company's name is called hearGo. They went through a difficult regulatory time. Their share price dropped a bit. And we spoke to their private equity owners, which own a big portion of theirs, and they said, listen here, it's the right time for us to combine our businesses. At that stage, I was not interested in being listed on the stock exchange. It was a tough time for IPOs and stuff on the stock exchange. We just came out of that 2022 terrible year. 23 was horrible. So the market weren't treating capital-heavy companies very well. They wanted very profitable businesses. So I said, listen, being a penny stock on the stock exchange is not something I'm interested in. But if we can take this company private and we do a deal, I'm really interested in it. So we did that deal, and it was then kind of joining two very big companies. What was great for us is they had this very discreet in-ear product, which you couldn't see from the outside. So we had the traditional behind the ear hearing aids. We said, we want to overcome the stigma. Right, with those devices. So they had the technology, we had the platform, we had the distribution. I think combining our forces was the right thing to do. So we combined forces in that merger. We merged the two as a multi-billion rand transaction. We raised another $100 million as part of that transaction to scale the business further. And I was the group CEO for the group, and we then restructured the executive team, and then we added another 200 people to our existing 250 people. So I was managing 450 people across 4 continents after the merger.
I mean, that could have kept you busy. How did you manage that transition personally? Because that's like a whole different role, right? You're leading a transaction that's going to take a lot of your time, and then you're integrating two organizations, and that is very different to innovating, finding product market fit, finding a channel, negotiating an amazing retail partnership, and then scaling what's initially a small organization. Now your job is completely different. How does this feel to you? How did you manage the shift personally?
So personally, I definitely look at private equity differently, especially US private equity, than I thought than it is. I mean, 80% of my role was keeping shareholders and the board happy and making sure everybody's aligned and kind of what the direction of the company's might be, right? Do we scale further? Do we go into more international markets? Do we launch your products? Don't we? The cash flow was massive. At that year, we were spending about 500 million rand on marketing, just on digital assets, right? So, got big marketing budgets, big teams, keeping those afloat. But for me personally, it was tough, right? So at that stage, we hired people in the US. We inherited this additional 200 people. So we had about 20 people, in hearX in the US, and then additional 200. And I was just like traveling up and down, between shareholder meetings, investor meetings, retailer meetings, and partner meetings, et cetera, et cetera. And we signed the deal end of March. After we were off to the races, and my health gave in.
Yeah.
So that was tough for me.
Yeah. I mean, it's been years now of sustained, chronic, intense stress, and you've been putting your body through it. So that's, I mean, that must have been tricky to manage. You've got a lot the company's depending on you. It's a crucial time. And so you're choosing between your responsibilities to the company, your team you love, and your body and your family. I mean, how did you navigate that?
It was hard, right? I mean, there's always this tension, right? Like you said, between, family life, personal things you believe in, and kind of managing this baby of yours, right? And in that time, also have a 2-year-old now. At that stage, she was a couple of months old, right? Yeah. Got this beautiful child in the house, and daddy is all over across the world, and it was hard, right? And I think that added to the tension as well. Just turned 40 now, and there's you kind of rethinking life, right? Yeah. So health gave in, and I think that was in hindsight now, looking back, it was a good thing for me, right? It allowed me to just think about all the important things in life, right? And I live for the startup. Yeah. That's everything I do. But I think what I've realized at that point in time is I don't have to do everything myself.
Yeah.
I have an amazing executive team. I set up the business. We just raised this large amount of capital. And if there was ever a time for me to focus on the stuff that's for the first time important to me, like my health and my family, this is the time.
Yeah.
So spoke to the board. We transitioned me out. Still a major shareholder. Still rooting for the business. But got a great CEO in. He's doing amazing work from New York. But this is a different chapter for me.
So it catalyzed what sounds like a recalibration you're very grateful for.
Yeah.
You've shifted into a new season. And I mean, you're looking very energized.
Extremely.
Yeah. And our discussions, you're loving this new season. So actually the health giving in was a signal that led to a really good outcome. But you took it seriously, and you made some major decisions about how, what's important in this stage of life and how you're going to reconfigure, which I think, too many founders take too long to listen to those signals and make the adjustments needed. So
I was one of them.
Yeah.
Just imagine, right? You've got this best in the world, Time 100 company. You're just like, you're on top of it, right?
Yeah.
You're working. So, I mean, since we've launched in the US, I was working South African time zones and US time zones, right? So I would be at the office at 8, and I'd leave the office at 9, 10, 11, and they'll do more calls. And we did lawyer calls at 2, 3 a.m. at night. And that's normal. It's just the way the life works, right?
Yeah.
And that just, you're on such adrenaline high
Yeah.
that you forget to listen to your body.
Yeah.
And that's just neglect, which has kind of led me to,
Yeah.
and it could have been worse. I mean, it could have been, could have ended up not being here anymore, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, thank God that, that didn't happen. So in hindsight, knowing what you know now, I mean, how long did you probably leave it too long? When would you have started kind of making different decisions, if you could go back?
yeah. So I think the biggest thing as a founder is being okay to let go.
Yeah.
So my biggest thing was I think I waited too long to hire senior people in the US,
Right.
so that I don't have to do all the travel,
Yeah.
don't have to jump on a plane to go see that retailer,
Yeah.
have to manage the US team myself, but have the right hierarchy to do that right. And because I've never, I think, always were in startups, never been the corporate structure, understanding how you just build in all these layers and levels inside an organization where you have to trust and you have to allow them to make those mistakes. Where, I know best, I'm the smartest guy in the room, I know how to do this, just give everything to me, and I become the bottleneck, right?
Yeah.
So it was that stress with everything combined, I think, that led to my health crisis. But I would most probably say 2-3 years. If I started 2-3 years earlier, I might have saved a lot of heartache and mistakes by hiring and putting the right structure in place.
So I think most founders I've spoken to who've had similar costly scale-up journeys, costly for the body, costly for the family, would probably make the shift to trusting others earlier. And it sounds like you're saying the same thing. Make the shift to trusting others and building structures so that you can do that earlier. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
It's a combination of that we have the capital and the right stuff to hire the right people at the right time. It's like
so many factors.
It's so many factors that play into that. But I think we would have been able to do that. I just didn't feel it was the right time to do it. But in hindsight, I should have.
So, I mean, amazing journey, Nic. I think it's one of the scale-up stories most founders dream about. Ultimately landing up dominating a really attractive niche on the global stage, and and being able to look back at having built something meaningful that touches a lot of people's lives in an important way. I mean, you're really unlocking a new dimension of life for a lot of people. So well done. Let's reflect a little bit now on the key principles, and then we're going to shift gear a little bit, talk about how AI would affect your scaling, and then we'll start winding down. So key principles that come out from your story for me definitely is the power of being number one. Just the power of earning the right to dominate a niche. I mean, you had 65% market share in an attractive niche, but then continuing to being number one through focus. So strategy by subtraction, once you find the thing that is scalable and that you're going to go all in on, and having the discipline to focus on scaling that business model. And it doesn't mean one thing, because you scaled through chapters, right? You scaled through breakthrough technology, and then by partnership, and then by M&A. So there's still evolution in the strategy, but in the end, it's focusing on scaling that business model and dominating the market. And that's the big theme that comes out of your story for me. What are the big themes that when you talk to founders, you like to share from your story?
Yeah, I agree. Those are extremely important themes. I think we spoke about the hiring the right people. And I really want to emphasize that. There are like two things that I want to emphasize, right? Is getting the right team around you from an executive level perspective. And if you're scaling internationally, and you don't know the ways of that market. Getting a local partner, hiring the right people, finding the right distributor, whatever your business model is, you don't understand that nuance. It's extremely nuanced and difficult to navigate.
And costly. The
mistakes, right? I just think how many people I could have hired for $4 million, right? And that's one mistake. And the second thing is, we spoke about legal counsel, right? Is specifically if you're in a space where there's regulation or it's regulated. I mean, everybody now with just data privacy, right, is already regulated, man. Fintech, wherever you're at, right? Make sure that is, do not short cheat that piece, because it is going to come and eat you. And I think those things, could have played out differently in our story. I think everything, by luck or by crook, worked out perfectly. But I think there were some close shaves where, I think we could have done things differently.
Okay, so top talent, build your A team, and make sure you've got scalable foundations. And in your case, legal foundations was a really important part of that. Okay, so now looking forward, I mean, it's 2026. Can you believe it? It's been 4 years almost, 3.5 years since the ChatGPT moment, right? 3.5 launches, 100 million users in virtually no time. And now we're in a world where everybody has access to the world's best thinking at their fingertips if you just know how to use it. So how does the existence of consumer AI, I'm not talking about the kind of machine learning and build your own models, just access to frontier models off the shelf for $20 a month, how would that change how you would approach scaling now?
Massively, right? One, I would have been able to read that contract, right? And understood the nuance, right? I mean, that was the first
point. Would have picked that up in about 30 seconds.
Exactly, right? But no, I think today, for a consumer direct-to-consumer business, AI is incredible, right? I mean, just recently, I think we've properly adopted service agents, right? So
you've got them operationalized.
I mean, you can chat to our virtual audiologist now.
Oh, wow.
It's training itself, right? We have automated voice now as well, where you can actually speak to it and actually give you, through your hearing aids, ideas. It actually picks up different environments now. Where you're based in. So instead of having to go into the app, we can pick up if you're in a restaurant, and it automatically switches those modes automatically now for us. This other thing is our regulatory compliance. Massive amount of research our teams had to do, read through, documents on this website or that website, proper prompting, getting that into a condensed view, which they can then just summarize. Saves so much in their headspace and their output capacity, right? Being able to do that. And of course, the next level is actually building up automated processes for our audits, right? Previously, it was Excels and these Word processes. Now, everything that happens inside the organization gets consolidated into a certain thing, gets pre-populated, reviewed by AI. So it's just changed the way we do business. And I think if we had these technologies 10 years ago, I think we could have done this most probably in half the time. Most probably, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are just so many constraint points when you're scaling that AI just shrinks that constraint by a lot. In some cases, gets rid of it entirely. So, of course, there are new challenges. Competition is going to be furious. Value propositions will age a lot faster. But the $4 million contract mistake could have been avoided, and a lot of other very expensive mistakes could have been avoided. And a lot of the constraints around hiring, onboarding, training, and getting people capable can be radically shrunk. So what is the number one most exciting use case you're excited about for general purpose off-the-shelf AI, helping executive teams in a scale-up environment? If you were still CEO of hearX and Alexi, how would you want the executive team to be using AI to shift how fast you can scale, how fewer mistakes you can make, how quickly and cheaply you can do things?
Yeah, so we actually underwent we wrote an AI policy framework just before I left. Because there was the rise of the coders were using some random no-code environment, and this one was using that, and this one was using that. And our biggest problem in our organization was we were working with medical data. So now the compliance team came to us and said, listen here, we cannot have people's data living somewhere. Uploaded everything and let it, fantastic for a data analyzer. But so I think there was one thing about, for us adopting AI, but there was another thing for us to say, what is the safe and responsible manner in doing that inside your organization, right?
Yeah.
So I think what was, if I was still there today, I'd make sure there was someone who really understands that, make a champion inside the organization, right? Someone who understands the policy, then you get someone third party to write it, actually understand the framework, and then make sure you still expose your company in a responsible manner to these and really identify where those key nuggets are. And it differs from the developing team to the regulatory team, which we just spoke about, to how the executive team is using it to put budgets together, right? Because it's different tools that's being used across the organization, right? But being purposeful in that AI is here to stay and it's going to help your business, but in a responsible manner, I think is the way in which I would have made sure that the organization progresses and stay ahead of the competitors.
So it sounds like AI adoption happened really fast for you guys and was obvious and became quite widespread pretty quickly. And so safety became the immediate priority because of the importance of the data privacy and security issues. Okay. So Nic, what I want to do now is shift gear and start kind of moving to close by moving through a couple of rapid fire questions. I want kind of people to get a couple of windows into how Nic thinks in light of everything you've learned. Like, what would you like to give to founders as a kind of a rapid stream of nuggets? So I'm going to go through a couple of rapid fire questions. Awesome. What book are you reading right now?
So I'm reading a book called Wild at Heart.
Okay, yeah, great.
It's actually an old book. Yeah. There's a rewrite of the book which I'm reading now, and it's just on the personal journey that I'm on. It's relevant for me around refining myself. And just making sure that I appreciate who I can be.
Yeah, for men, for fathers. Yeah, good. One book you'd recommend for founders who are planning to scale or early in that journey to read?
Unfortunately, there's no other book that I can recommend than Art of Scale.
You did do the foreword, so you have to.
I am in love with those principles, right through when it was still in 10x to Art of Scale today. Every single day in a board meeting, I would reference something that I've learned in 10x and Art of Scale that Jason has said, and I keep Jason's words, and I say, I didn't say that. I said Jason said that, so you have to listen. No, it's really an incredible book, and I would recommend it to all founders.
Thanks, Nic. I mean, thanks for helping me live my mission. You know, my mission is more families with food on the table because there are more people employed, because more Nics succeeding scaling companies really fast and creating a lot of jobs. So thank you for helping me live my mission. Your favorite quote?
So, and that mostly comes from that tension, right? We spoke about. So for me, it's always been, if you're not embarrassed by your first product launch, you've launched too late.
Yeah.
And it is so true to the core of, I think, most entrepreneurs, is get the product out there, learn quick and learn fast, but also fail fast. Once you've learned
the lesson
and move on, amputate it once the data is not there to support it, and move on.
That's the discipline. Okay. Most underrated skill in surviving scale-up chaos?
Just letting go of control. Not being okay with not being the smartest person in the room. And then the other thing is, like I said, is that skill that makes you a great startup founder is that same skill that's going to mostly break you in becoming that scale up, right? So learning and growing with your startup and investing in yourself as the founder as well is so important.
You can save yourself a lot of pain by making those transitions quicker, which I think that's why I highly recommend leadership coaches or founders especially who are going to go through these transitions and need a shifting paradigm of their leadership role, and that requires the self-awareness, and the coaching process really helps with that.
And find someone that has either been through it or has helped people that's been through it, right? That's so important.
I mean, the way I would summarize the business case of business coaching is it's the biggest return on investment in pain saved if you engage the process well. Hardest leadership lesson. We've covered that. One process change that you made that saved the company.
So the biggest process change that saved the company, I didn't make, but then eventually made the process change, is not looking at the data. And I want to just highlight that for 2 seconds. Is we like labor is cheap in South Africa. Let's do all the customer support and sales from here. I was 50% right. Customer support is amazing because the person already has the product in their ears.
Right.
Having sales from here was the wrong choice.
Right.
My sales team here didn't understand the local nuance. They didn't
Yeah.
speak the language. They didn't trust them. With these guys from Africa trying to sell me something.
Yeah.
Sold it in the US, my team there, but supported it from here.
Right.
And that process changed when we shifted sales to the US was massive.
Yeah, I mean, it ties back again to in-market context. Yeah. Okay, good. If rebuilding hearX from scratch now, if everything else stayed the same, but Nic knows what Nic now knows, what one thing would you change?
Expensive lawyers.
Expensive lawyers. Okay. $4 million mistakes.
Yeah. IP strategy. In this merger of ours, we had to pay tens of millions of rands in restructuring our company and thinking about IP, which we could have saved if we just, when we set up the business, spent the time in lawyers, thinking through those things or the eventuality of where this business was going.
And at the time, it's a classic founder trap. You think you can't afford it. And then you learn the hard way, you couldn't afford not to have it. Yeah. Nic, thank you. Really enjoyed the chat and love your story. Really appreciate having walked this journey with you to a degree over the last 10 years. Proud of you. You've made South Africa and Africa proud and you've created a lot of jobs. So well done. Yeah.
Thanks, you, Jason.
Nic. What I love about Nic's story is how well it illustrates the power of the number one principle of strategy, which is be number one. And also how that entails operationally the discipline of saying no and the discipline of amputating things that might have been a good idea in the past, but are no longer a good investment of our time, resources, and energy. So be number one and then scale by subtracting all the things that don't help you be number one. That brings us to a close of today's episode. If this kind of content helps you on your scale-up journey, then I recommend you join the Founders at Work community. You can go to foundersatwork.co.za. You'll see the content hub with the past podcasts and future events coming up as well. Join us for live masterclasses once a month and listen to other stories like Nic's once a month. Hope to see you there, and thanks for listening.